Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Alena and I'm gonna be your entertainer tonight. Or not. Who knows, who knows. The topic of today's video is a thing that I have discussed with my sister, well, technically my cousin, but I still call her my sister, plenty of times. And it's the specifics of Russian mentality. One specific thing. And the question for this video and for you is whether it is somehow related with Finnish SISU. Russian national character is one of the most popular topics for classical literature, classical Russian literature, I mean, like Tolstoy, Nekrasov, Pushkin, well, maybe Pushkin, but to me he's on a more positive note. Lermontov and all those guys. I should say that Nekrasov is mostly related to this video, because I'm going to talk about suffering, about how Russians are used to handle suffering. I have read this wonderful book, sorry for the lighting, so it's SISU by Joanna Nyland. Is it Joanna or Johanna? Okay. I'm not sure it's written in Russian here. SISU is very well described in this book, I enjoyed it. And it made me think whether our two nationalities are related in this way too. It's no secret that we have a lot in common, but do we have SISU in common? That's the question. So, I have gathered some material for this topic on the internet, on different resources. I'm going to translate this to you from Russian into English, and you will be able to compare this this suffering, handling, coping with suffering or whatever, with SISU. And we'll see what thoughts you will have and I will have in the end of this video. We are starting from the article from Peekaboo. It's a Russian site with different stories, like life stories, funny stories, and all that stuff. Maybe it reminds me, read it a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, so this was sent to me by my sister, and that's how the topic of today's video was created in my mind. It's a relatively long article, so I'll try to make it shorter. Okay, the title of it is When Suffering is the Way of Life. Russia, you know. So, as I understood, this woman is a psychologist, and at first she says, let's start with something from her consultations. A pregnant client says, sometimes I feel shame that I don't suffer, because you don't usually feel very good and you feel nauseous during pregnancy. Is it okay to be pregnant without it? Shame? Why? Okay. Another one said, I gave birth and it wasn't painful. And I told this to my friends and they said, well, then you don't know what it's like to give birth. Okay. The next one. I bought a robotic vacuum cleaner and my mom said, yeah, it's very convenient, you shouldn't scrub the floor yourself and be tired after that and all that. And she felt that it's kind of reproaching. So the first conclusion that author makes is that society demands that a person should suffer, and it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman, and it doesn't matter whether they're young or not, nothing matters, you just should suffer. And she's going to talk about suffering that is not brought to us outside, but suffering as a way of life, and exactly this life is considered the right one, the proper one. Mental. Okay, let's not judge yet. So, her statements from this article. Work should be exhausting, or at least you shouldn't like your work, your job. Okay, because it's the only way to get money properly. And she quotes a Russian band, Nautilus Pompilius. Oh my god. So there is a song that says that work is measured by tiredness. So it's not measured by process or a result or the amount of money you earn, but by the tiredness, the level of tiredness. And she says that's the main point of argument between the older generation and the younger generation. By the way, I agree with this, and I should say that I really notice this thing in my grandparents and sometimes in my parents. They are used to this maybe Soviet mentality that people need to work hard, to always suffer, to handle everything. But hopefully, unfortunately, what I noticed is that my generation, millennials, and the younger generation, Generation Z, we are a bit different, especially Generation Z. We are not here to tolerate stuff. Then, other examples. If a woman likes her job, even loves her job, she's considered to be a bad housewife, that's a quote, or a fake woman. It's horrible. Yeah, definitely. And the same thing goes to the house chores. The author says she knows a woman who prefers to wash her clothes by hand because she feels tired and she feels like she has done her work properly. We all need to go to a psychologist, don't we? Alright. To this work, hard and undesired, we add problems in love life. For example, again, she talks from a woman's perspective. So here is about a husband who will be aggressive, abusive, drinking, and it's okay because everyone lives like this. Because, you know, life has these different sides. It can be good, it can be bad, and well, who knows what's gonna happen. And there is even a proverb in the Russian language. If he or she hurts you or hits you, that means that, again, they love you. Really? I'm not sure about that, really. But I remember that in primary school, when like girls and boys were having some fights or arguments, teachers really used to say this phrase. So maybe, you know, it's good for children because, for example, a guy hits a girl just because that's a little boy, he doesn't know what to do, what not to do, and the teacher says, oh, it means you love that girl, and he is embarrassed because he is a child. They're embarrassed about this stuff, and maybe he won't do this again. That's clever, but it shouldn't be applied to adults. And the author concludes this part with a phrase that the peak of it is that if there is a woman who is happy with her marriage, her friends might think that she's insincere. I'm glad it's not applied to my generation. I mean, not maybe for the whole generation, at least to my friend group. I honestly don't understand the phrase, well, all people live like this, and you should live like this. Why? For example, that's another thing my grandmother used to say. She doesn't say this anymore. When I was talking about my desire to move to Finland, she said that there is also a proverb in Russian. You will be useful only in the place where you were born. I honestly, every time I hear this, I want to ask people, and so, are you useful here? I mean, that's mean, of course, but why? Where do these stereotypes come from? Concluding all the points that the author mentioned, she says, suffering becomes a sense, a meaning, and a way of life. It means that people don't recycle their traumatic experience, their painful experience, and that they just store it inside and they take on this role of suffering person. And she says that the world around the reality distorts because of this, and that it's very difficult to come out of this state. and she advises everyone who recognize themselves in this article to go to a psychologist. Well, I agree with her that we do have this problem in Russia. We really do. People don't want to go to psychologists, people love to suffer, people love to talk about how much they suffered. Even, you know, the simple thing, like discussing illnesses. There are, of course, regular talks about illnesses, just like on what is on the surface, but some people really like to dive into the topic and even compete who feels worse. I'm scared to think that I can be like this in the future. Hopefully not. Considering this, I don't think it's SISU. Maybe it started with SISU in the older times, because, you know, we had slavery, and even after that, peasants suffered a lot, and, you know, last century also wasn't a very easy one, and people had to live like this. But nowadays, we can live happily without thinking too much about these problems. Not all problems, of course, but you know, there are some that can be solved. For example, if your spouse is abusive, leave the spouse. Or if you're tired from household chores, buy robotic devices who will help you with that. If you don't like your job, change the job. Or maybe it's not understandable for me. I don't know, guys, what do you think? To continue this topic, I'm gonna translate you several very short stories from different Russian websites. So the first one, I'm gonna put it here for those who understand Russian. I'm furious that people from the Soviet Union and the older generation, good life is something bad, considers something bad, inappropriate. You always need to bear your cross. To send your relative who is a psycho to a special place, if you can afford it, is a sin. To divorce a drinking spouse or a cheater is a sin, because, you know, the God suffered and we should suffer too. Because what people will say, if they say that person lives for themselves, it means that this person is bad and negative, and it's a hole for that they, I always confuse this, that they don't suffer. Alright. I think it's related quite a lot to the previous article. The next one. It's a screenshot of a message. Hello, it's 6 a.m. It's in the outskirts of the city. I'm passing several private houses on my way to a bus stop, and elderly lady, maybe she is around 80, is using a spade to clear the front way, is it called front way? Like the way in front of her house, from snow. There was a lot of snow. And her neighbor asks, "Why are you doing this? Like in the morning and it's dark." I have called an ambulance, you know, the people will come. It's not really appropriate, like, to have this snowy front way. It seems like she felt more or less okay if she could do this. Then here's a picture of the phrase says, how people used to deal with their mental traumas. Do you recognize what's happening? I remember this. People are beating their carpets to clean them from the dust, and I actually used to help my grandfather to do this, and it was quite fun. I mean, I probably didn't have many traumas in my childhood, but it was really, really fun. The next two quotes, pictures, stories, little stories are gonna be about how we have fun in Russia. So, as I understand, that's from Twitter. In Russia, if you are asked to smile and wave your hand and say what's your name, most likely you have a heart attack. Yeah. And another one like this is a woman and her maybe 3-year-old daughter have just entered the bus. The child is laughing and she's happy, and then her mother says, "Okay, stop being happy." And you know, this phrase is translated as "Russia is for the sad people." Stop being happy. That's SISU, not SISU. No idea. That's BS, not SISU. Alright, and the last thing that I found is the conclusion of today's topic. So, something about Russia. After living without hot water for a few weeks, yes, we have this weird thing. Hot water doesn't work for around 2 weeks every summer, because people repair pipes every year. You know, the 21st century. Every year people need to use something else to wash themselves. Alright, so after living for 2 weeks without hot water, we finally had it 2 days later than was promised. But it instantly stopped working. I called a woman who works in this company, who is responsible for that, and I asked her when it was going to end, like this disaster. The woman said, "Don't call anywhere, nothing will change." The author says that he wants to have this phrase like in a monument somewhere near governmental buildings, and like a slogan, you know. So, "Don't call anywhere, nothing will change" is Russia in one phrase. Well, these are my examples of this Russian national, my phone dropped, of Russian national mentality. Do you think it's connected with SISU? To be honest, you know, at first I thought that it might be, but now after more profound thinking, I think it's not. It's a different trait. It's just a culture of suffering. It used to be SISU in more difficult times, like the previous century and the centuries before that. But now we have everything to change this. At least we have psychologists. And people are still very reluctant to do this. I also believe that SISU is present in our lives, but it usually concerns stuff like suffering from the outside, as the author of the first article said. Things that we can't really influence, things that happen unexpectedly, and hard things that we need to deal with. You know, I think that Russians are very good at handling this, but the bad thing is that we usually keep everything to ourselves, and then later it becomes difficult to live with it, to cope with it, and all that stuff. I know I'm guilty of that too, but I'm learning to be different. Alright, that's my take on some specifics of Russian national character. Is it similar to Finnish? Is it not? Is it SISU? Is it not? Tell me guys in the comments below what you think about all this stuff. Are you like this? Hopefully not. I really hope that you're all healthy and happy, or at least you have enough SISU to handle everything. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!